Hello, everyone. Today we will be discussing what it means to be exceptional as it relates to American exceptionalism and whether it is right for the United States to truly call itself exceptional. This group is made up of Logan B., Irving, Logan K., and myself. Exceptionalism is normally defined as setting yourself above another nation based on a multitude of factors. Historically, these exceptions have come from God to things like history or destiny, that one day your nation will be great. Bromwich takes a different approach, describing exceptionalism as a lack of awareness and self restraint. He goes on to say that he believes that no nation should call themselves exceptional. In any case where a country wants to see themselves as greater than others, you get this form of exceptionalism. America specifically is a country that thinks of themselves as completely different than any other nation on the planet. Nothing can truly compare to America. It's unique. Lipset called American exceptionalism a double-edged sword. This can be seen in this quote from former President Barack Obama, where he says that he, quote, believes in American exceptionalism with every fiber of his being. In this instance, Barack Obama was using American exceptionalism as a positive when it can truly be detrimental to the image of the United States. Exceptionalism is divisive because you always want to believe that you are exempt from the laws, but if someone else were to exempt themselves from these laws, there would be negative feelings. We have these laws in place for a reason, and the laws should apply to everyone. Bromwich goes on to argue that it's immoral to treat yourself as an exception. The goal is to apply the same laws to everyone fairly. American exceptionalism takes a couple of different forms. First is America is exceptional just purely by its nature. Bromwich uses the quote, its unique goodness shines throughout all of its works. Your country can be right or wrong, but your country is always right and never wrong. Another form of exceptionalism in the United States is this instance of circumstance, that your country is good right now and one day will be great, so please give us an exception. The last form American exceptionalism takes place is with unconditional love, that your nation is great purely because it is your nation. Really, the term American exceptionalism is incredibly loosely defined, and yet a very powerful term to use.
Bromwich, in his time to rethink American exceptionalism, covers the idea that America has always been thought of as exceptional or different. However, America is not entirely different from other countries. America has its differences, but the term American exceptionalism is overused in the sense of gaining votes as a politician or taking sides. It is often used to sway patriots of our nation. A patriot is defined as a person who vigorously supports their country and is prepared to defend it against enemies or detractors. Why might someone support the idea of American exceptionalism so heavily? This ties into the social norms that the American society has created around being the best. The fine line between confidence and arrogance from building success from the ground is easily crossed. The USA must be the best. This ideology has spread like a wildfire through the minds of those that truly believe our nation is the true superpower of the world. To be exceptional as a country, it might be assumed that because America is thought of as different, Americans are excluded from certain rules that other countries may not be. That is not the case. It is immoral to assume or attempt to acknowledge that we are exceptional. America was colonized from a simple idea of freedom, and yes, our history is rich with victory and sacrifice that became the foundation of what America is today, but that isn't something that is unique. Every country has their own history of victories, sacrifice, and defeat that led them to where they are today. This dates back to ancient Greek. Athenian philosophy implies that all countries come from familiar backgrounds, and countries at their most current states are trying to polish the fine details to current social norms and practices collectively agreed upon by the world. The greatest of Greek cities truly believed that they were the best. They prided themselves on their government, their citizens, and their previous deeds that led to success, especially in war. David Bromwich writes in his paper, Athenians choose to risk their lives by perpetually carrying a difficult burden, rather than submitting to the will of another state. Their readiness to die for their city is the proof of their greatness. Many might argue that the United States military is similar in this sense, and that is what makes us stand out from the rest of the world. It was the U.S. military that won freedom from England. It was the U.S. military that transformed and shaped different policies within the U.S. It was the U.S. military that became strong enough and threatening enough to become that so-called superpower many believe America to be. In the United States Air Force, one of the branches of the military, the mission is to fly, fight, and win. Air power anytime, anywhere. They also have a number of articles of codes of conduct. The first being, I am an American, fighting in the forces which guard my country and our way of life. I am prepared to give my life in their defense. Is this readiness to fight and die what makes America exceptional? Is it truly what made America exceptional in the past? The preparedness to die is what is believed to make the Athenians so great. I would argue that other countries in today's day and age also have that readiness within their military, thus providing evidence that even the U.S. military isn't exceptional in that manner. However, they may be exceptional in the case of the resources and assets they have, including but not limited to numerous aircraft, nuclear weapons, and billions of dollars. Yet there are still some countries that also have similar resources. Maybe American exceptionalism comes from the past.
As Logan stated in the last point about how maybe America was exceptional in its past, we're going to bring up some ideas here that state otherwise. Like when Abraham Lincoln was addressing the nation with the Gettysburg Address, he was talking about how we shouldn't look at the past, we should look into the future about how great this nation should become. And I have a problem with that, and so does my whole group, because we believe if you don't look into the past and all the mistakes that were committed and just skip over it, then in the future it might happen again, or consequences will arise in the future. Like with slavery, he abolished slavery and then he said, let's just look into the future. But I don't think he actually did any like healing process or gave their slaves what they deserved for being enslaved for so many years. And that doesn't make America exceptional. I think if we want to be exceptional, we need to look at our past mistakes and grow from them and learn how to not just move on from something. Because now that that's present day 2023 and through the last couple of years, Black Lives Matter protests and the organization has been on the rise because of what Abraham Lincoln and our nation did in the past. And they have all the right to do so because they did not get a healing process, they did not get what they deserved. And so now they're marching and wanting what they deserve, which is completely fair. He brings up another interesting point about how Americans should love their country unconditional, no matter the atrocities that Americans have committed and are still committing to this day. Do we still love our country after all the bad things we've done, or do we try to work towards it and recognize the faults that we make? And think an interesting point to make here is with nationalism. Like, how well do you love your country, and will you do anything for your country, or will you back them up no matter what? And I think people should, but I don't think they should do so blindly. I think they need to ask questions. They need to be proactive in knowing what's wrong, what's right, how they can fix it, or at least try, because that's the only way that we can help to make it a better nation.
To summarize Kevin Hernandez's great introduction, we as a group stand by Bromwich, with American exceptionalism being far from correct and ideal. The ideology of a country being exceptional and exempt from the rules other countries follow is wrong. It is detrimental for the United States to come off as the leading example of how things should be executed when America is far from even being good. There needs to be a sense of justice when it comes to respecting other countries and taking in as much information as possible to correctly execute legislation and maintain a safe, positive society, with the definition of American exceptionalism varying from individual to individual. Placing such a title on an entire country is a massive mistake. The term is powerful and loosely defined. To summarize Logan Brager's argument, all countries have similar characteristics. As discussed by Logan, preparedness, pride, and the willingness to die for one's country are essential. It is important to question what makes a country exceptional. Is it the militia, the mental health rates, or the quantity of assets under U.S. control? These are questions that we should be debating amongst one another online instead of aiming to distract and entertain one another. We must be educating and learning from one another as a planet on how to mindfully live life and use resources instead of selfishly living day to day just to get by and survive. To summarize what Logan Kaplan was saying is that the country should always be moving in a forward direction, not backwards, as philosophized by Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was placing status on the country based on the potentiality of America during the Civil War. The United States certainly is not the greatest. Having said this, using potentiality as a component of American exceptionalism is not possible. Learning from the past is a necessary virtue. There's a good saying that my friend told me, and it goes by, if you attempt to erase history, you are doomed to repeat it. We will always stand by our country despite the mistakes such as the Black Lives Matter police brutality with people supporting the policing and the criminals or alleged criminals during those times. There are definitive lines that cannot be crossed, and human rights involve such. There should be more debates on what the country represents and stands for in order to establish peace. It feels like a large percentile of the country does not act in virtuous manners like manipulation, fraud, to get the attention of others, and just to increase in wealth for one's own selfish desires. To carry on, American exceptionalism is immoral. To think oneself is the best in comparison to others. With its existence, it clearly represents the direction in which the nation is heading, very unvirtuous, very Spartan-like, and it could fall if this continues.